everybody. I am excited to go live this afternoon with somebody who I just think is phenomenal. And her name is Vie Boheme. And she is a singer, a dancer, a choreographer, a yoga teacher, an all-around badass artist. And I'm going to bring her on. We're going to talk today about a lot of different things that connect to bodyfulness. You know, I love to talk about bodyfulness, but also really how embodiment can be this portal to creativity and also ways to have resilience and also be part of a real political movement and resistance given some of the social systems and structures in place that are unjust and problematic. And so really looking at kind of this individual embodiment and how it can really impact the collective. So I'm going to bring Vie on. Hello, lady.
Hey.
Thanks for
How are
joining
you?
me.
Thanks for having me.
I'm connecting a lot more with community in part because some of it is in part to really just because I've been doing a lot of publicity and stuff for my new book. But
Congratulations.
thank you. It's like all I live and breathe these days. It's like, you know, like myopically focused on it. But what's interesting is, I mean, the title is The Pleasure Is All Yours, but at the core, it's really about this. People think then it's a sex book, which is nothing wrong with that, but it's not really ultimately a sex book. It's at the core, it's about bodyfulness. And the idea of bodyfulness is really how to undo basically centuries of toxic conditioning that are about repression regarding our bodies, connecting to our bodies, listening to our bodies, expressing our bodies, whether it be our emotional body or physical body, and then really feeling good in our body, within ourselves and with others. And so when I think of you and your work, to me, that evokes this idea of bodyfulness as far as the way that you channel and express, you know, everything. I mean, art and beauty and wisdom, and not only the way that you move it, but that you express it in an auditory way, and not only just as an artist, but as a yoga teacher. So when I think of bodyfulness, you're part of what I think of how you share and express your gifts with your physical body and more. So I guess maybe that's where I wanted to find out, in this world that is so full of body marginalization and body terrorism, and particularly people who are socialized as female, not feeling connected to their bodies or like they can express their bodies. How were you able to sort of rise through that to really create the work that you do? The long-winded introduction.
No, it's great. Thank you very much. And that's a great question. I think that I would say, you know, quarantine had great and not so great, you know, impacts, obviously. But I would say that the amount of time that I spent alone, and I do spend a lot of time by myself anyway, as it is, but that time alone really allowed me to think about how I was feeling and if there was really any reason to continue to prioritize how other people were feeling any more than I had. I mean, as women, a lot of times we often displace ourselves for other people just out of like really, you know, firmly instilled, you know, cultural habit of like, sorry, excuse me, or
right.
and then in the Twin Cities,
sorry,
yeah, and in the Twin Cities, for me, it's impacted times 10. That sentiment is. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, Southfield, Michigan, in the suburbs, and culturally, that's not how it is. You don't apologize all the time for the space that you're taking up, with quite the kind of culture that it is here in the Twin Cities. So oftentimes it's hard for me when I'm, you know, this is another reason why I travel a lot. And so not being able to travel so much, and really being able to like sit inside of my own body and feel whatever it was I was feeling, which I do a lot of that all the time, actually. But there was something about this time that really inspired me further to embrace more of myself and more of all the aspects of my humanity that make me a human being. And you probably saw that with some of the events that I was offering. I'm always seeking to listen to the parts or the things that are less savory or the things that we try to avoid, because those things are going to meet us anyway. And so,
right. And ignoring or pretending they don't exist does not do us any favors.
Nope, because they're still going to meet you. Like, you're still going to have that depression. It's, it's just, are you going to have that experience and pretend like you're not having it and still have it? Or are you going to willingly know that it's happening and be proactive as much as you can to either recognize this is where I am and I need to be here, or this is where I've been and I need to move forward. So,
right.
Yeah,
like the only way out is through. I love that saying. I don't know who said it, but the only way out is through.
Yeah. So I would say that, it was just compacted and during quarantine, and that really forced me to create opportunities and experiences to expand, experiencing more. So the quiet times, the restful yin yoga you were seeing me offer during COVID, the After Dark yoga series, tapping into that sensual energy, because it seems like we're always trying to suppress those aspects of ourselves in some ways, or always trying to avoid depression and avoid quiet time, even if it's how we're feeling. And we're always suppressing our sexuality and our sensuality just because somehow the Puritan nature of American culture says that it's bad, among other countries. But those two things were like really at a fever pitch to me of like needing to be acknowledged. So that's a long-winded answer to the question you asked.
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting that some of the silver linings that people have found during the pandemic. But I think that, I mean, I met you before we even knew this would be on the horizon, and you had already had, I don't know, decades in the making of being somebody who isn't afraid to express yourself and to do so in really beautiful ways through your body, whether it be with movement or voice or acting, singing, and that I think is. It's such a healthy part of being human from the beginning of time. As humans, we sang and we danced and we expressed, and we're not meant to be repressed and contained. And I don't know how long you've been sort of doing the work you've been doing, but it seems like you have defied any of the systems in place that say like to not express your body or be in your body. So I just would love to know kind of how you've been able to really express that so freely compared to what a lot of people feel like they can't do.
I would say that having, I grew up dancing as a kid in a very, I did like compete for a couple of years, but generally it was a very recreational and performative, enjoyment-based experience for me. It wasn't a like hard training experience of like, it was constant. I was in dance all the time. Everybody knew I was dancing. But I would say that pursuing a professional career as a dancer is a constant journey of pushing my body and seeing where it can go and what it can do and getting it to do more things. So I would say that part of my background with my experience with my body is where that stems from. As it extends out into the rest of my creativity, I can tell you that the moment that I remember being inspired to expand further, this was like, I don't dance really with full-time dance companies anymore, but the last full-time company, not the last one, but the last full-time 9 to 5, Monday to Friday dance company that I danced for, the choreographer gave me a solo. And he was like, all right, so I want you to start with this piece of choreography from the beginning. And then I want you to go to this piece of choreography and that one and this one and that one. I want you to eventually go through all the choreography in the entire piece. And I want you to turn it into this crazy, I want it to get faster and faster and faster. And it was just this really extra overwhelming, not totally necessary, but it was a task.
Really pushing you.
Yeah. And so in rehearsing that, in going through this solo, the more challenging it became, the more I kept finding myself itching for more. And I was like, man, I feel like I want to sing while I'm doing this.
Yeah.
You know, like this is crazy, but I still feel like I can go somewhere else with it. And that was not that particular experience wasn't the circumstance to take that risk. That was not the task at hand, you know, for that job. But that's where the seed kind of sprouted.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you were listening to yourself. Like you were really, there was like such a real inner knowing that you were paying attention to that, and then told you to follow it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had already, also at that point, I had started doing a lot of yoga by then too. So my ability to listen to myself or listen to what needed to happen was beginning to be tuned from that experience as well. So, and I got into yoga for sheer vanity purposes. I was like, I want to be a fierce dancer. I want to be fierce. I want to have fierce focus. I want to be I want to be strong. Like that was why I got into yoga. And
right. Yeah.
Of course.
For me, it was like cross training is why I wanted to. I was like, all right, I'm an endurance athlete. I'm going to do this for cross training. Yeah. And then I think so many people, especially people like us that are teachers, we all have our stories of what led us to it. And then how there's this, oh damn, like this, now there's this piece, I'm out peeling back the layers for better or for worse. And this is what it means to me now. But at the time for you, it was to like sharpen your dancing skills. Yeah.
There was no other purpose. I was just like trying to be a more, I just wanted to be fierce. You know, like that was the language I used with in my own mind. And
but it's interesting that you went to yoga rather than something like martial arts, or that's to me what I think of as also maybe being fierce.
I was also in my head a lot. I can tend to be very heady and somewhat, you know, just in my head about what's going on, you know, more than I'm present in what's happening. That can lead me to being very anxious, and just ahead of myself and behind myself and not really in the moment. And so I think some of my colleagues saw that and they recommended it. They were like, you should come take yoga with us, or you should, you know, you should come take this class. And I mean, I had some yoga experience before that, but this is the moment where it turned into a daily practice, you know, at that time. But yeah, I forget what was the other part of your question.
Well, I mean, I think really it was just to find out like the path that led you to sort of do what you do for a living. And given the ways in which for a lot of people socialize as female, if they're connected to their body and it's a way that's really mean and punishing or critical or like you said earlier, not wanting to take up space. And I love that you defy that and in your work of just like, I am taking up space and I'm doing it my way and pay attention.
Yeah. Well, what I would add to that though is, I mean, I had the same experience as many of those, you know, women identified folks, femme identified folks, that and dance was not kind, you know, as a career. You know, it was not encouraging. It's not a team sport. There is no encouragement when you get it right. There's just either you did it or you didn't. And if you did it right, if you got it, then you should have.
So it's like all or nothing.
Very much. So it's not an encouraging the places that I was dancing, let me also say that. Some of the places and some of my experiences, I cannot say that was not across the board, but a lot of it. And even the training is that way though, you know. It's, you know, it's very competitive and it's a lot on the mind, you know, to figure out if you're good enough or if you're if you are, there's a sense of wanting to take up space, but there's also a sense of not taking up too much space. Like both of those things live in that room. Yeah.
Or like, only taking up space in this certain way that subscribes to this particular performative value.
Oh yes, exactly.
Otherwise,
100%. Yeah. Exactly. 100%. And I dealt with that, you know. Some places encouraged more of that space taking, and other places didn't want any of that. They're like, we just want the technique, we just want the dance, keep it pure, you know. Like don't bring yourself to it, just keep it pure, you know. So compartment, you know. And that's something I would say that all of us dancing bodies dealt with. I don't know that was necessarily divided up into
Yeah.
gender experiences, but
Well, it's,
yeah.
and it's interesting because I've talked about in my book and just in other with other podcasts and whatnot that I definitely had, even though I grew up in both a sex positive household and a household that really encouraged me as an athlete, I still got to this place, especially with competitive sports and being on a Division I ski team, cross country, the like dorkier of the two. But there was this place of it was all about the outer form and that place you got when you cross the finish line and training. And I felt like I was really using my body and overriding my body's limits, which maybe one could argue there's a time and a place for that, especially to do it intentionally. But even though I feel really lucky that I grew up with somebody who was really connected to like the power and the pleasure of my body, I got to this place, and as a woman in the Western world, of course, and with media messages, everything, I got to a place where I was absolutely not respecting it, and I was just using it, and I think it was mainly through yoga and some somatic psychology that I began to really inhabit it in a way that was true to me, and had more self-regulation that could also have moments of performance. But
I have a question about that for you. What was the impetus for you to make that shift for yourself?
Well, as I said earlier, I got into yoga for cross training. So again, it was about this goal of the outcome of the more endurance focused sports that I was doing, skiing, swimming, biking, running, triathlons, a lot of that kind of thing. And so I really surprised myself when so much more came up for me when I slowed down, when I was listening, when I was trying to be curious versus critical. And a real inner knowing came up. And since then, it's actually, at first it was really extreme because I went from like really being defiant about it, like pissed off at fucking like patriarchy and all these ways in which I was told to be in my body. And I still have moments where I get like rageful. Right? But so it caught me by surprise. And then like a lot of things, it was more hindsight. I look back at how did I go from being somebody who was this child into adolescence that like expressed my body and let myself receive my body. And I didn't have a filter, to somebody who then was like, I need to be this way. And even, as a privileged white woman, I could have had it much worse. And yet, I only know my experience of it, like feeling really hard, but also just as a woman of color, do you feel like, both in Detroit and in Minneapolis, do you feel like there's also just what are some of the barriers for you that you think that are even harder as a female?
I guess I feel like the ways are not anything different or new that haven't already been like I don't feel like we know all the ways. We know the ways.
Yeah.
How do I deal with those ways? I pace myself and ask myself, what is any particular interaction worth to me to address, and to what extent?
Yeah.
So just having, I think that the challenges I experience, some of the challenges I've kept at bay because a lot of the work I do by myself. But I've started to, draw larger, or not just larger, but more people, larger teams. But that's kind of a heady way of me talking about the projects I'm doing. They all kind of have their own teams. So anyway, working with more people comes with working with more people's stuff, comes with, other people's assumptions, other people's blind spots around how they interact with, to deal with and support Black women. So for me, as it's not about what specific things I deal with as much as finding myself asking people, how do you show up for Black women? Because a lot of people don't consider race or things like that when they decide that they want to collaborate with people. or they considered it and they thought about it and they're like, yeah, of course I want to work with this Black woman. Cool. And that can sometimes be where people feel like that's the edge of their understanding of the commitment that they've made. Or so I find myself reminding people or informing them of the ways in which, you know, white supremacy and patriarchy and all of these things, like reminding them that, you know, these things are in play, like arbitrarily, like just period. Whether you choose to participate on purpose or you don't, those things are still working.
Yeah.
Unless you make a choice to stop them, unless you make a choice to interfere with them, unless you make a choice, they're just working. So I've had some experiences where I've been harmed in one way or the other by people just not paying attention and just following the status quo, and me being like, so y'all just gonna, okay,
go along with this.
Yeah,
just keep playing along with this. Yeah.
So I would say that's been a more recent thing, is that people are just, you know, living, and they're not necessarily pretending it's not happening, but they're just not attentive. Which then still puts the onus on me to make them aware.
And that's part of their privilege, to get to not be attentive, I suppose, right? Like that's like that you could just choose to not attend to it and, you know, go on your merry way, right? I mean, I think that's part of the problem too. It's like you get to check out from it.
But that's what I'm saying too, is that the ways in which, you know, harm comes to me are myriad. And so it's up to my decision is, all right, you know, what is it worth to me to deal with this? What is it worth to me to deal with that? You know, is this necessary to talk about right now? Is this something I need to talk about when we wrap this project? So that's that type of navigation is what is on my plate.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, like so much of like my work is in the lane of like pleasure activism, coping with, you know, body trauma, sexual health, repression. And, you know, that's what I have really, I know best. And that's sort of where my social activism and political work has been, and working and fighting sex trafficking and that sort of thing. And I've been, you know, feeling like I've been championing this for people who identify as female and who are women, but not without really diving into, though, the intersectionality of race as within women. You know, growing up a feminist, it's like women unite. Well, okay, yes, and it's not the same, obviously, for all women in the U.S. that are in a body. So I just know that that's just my work to like really like break down the differences. It's not the same. I mean, there's similarities, there's overlap due to sexism, and yet sexism still is going to look differently when you know, depending on the privilege that you have. So
what I also would like to just add, as you continue to do that work, there are just a couple of organizations that I've collaborated with in the Twin Cities to serve women and femmes. The Aliveness Project, it's I don't know if you know who that is. They're in Uptown area-ish, and they serve people who are living with HIV/AIDS, and so I've worked with them before. Also, North Point Health and Wellness in North Minneapolis, and also All Square. They serve individuals who are formerly incarcerated by getting them employed and helping to do what they can to get them placed into housing situations, and also because they have a restaurant attached to them, so the folks that they serve also run that restaurant. And so I've offered workshops there for Black women and femmes only, to all of those. So I'm offering those spaces to use, places to check out, to continue doing that work.
Yeah. And what I'll do is I'll have, when I post this to YouTube, I'll make sure I put down those, and later when I post it also on Instagram, I'll like include the like links to those places. And because that's, you know, it's one thing to want to get involved, but then, you know, sometimes people don't know where. Or I know also like Breaking Free. I don't know if they also work a lot with sex trafficking, and they're in Minneapolis. But kind of thinking of this idea of a pleasure activism, since that's, you know, my big thing is like how we have this fucked up relationship around pleasure, at least a lot of cultures do in the US. Like for you, how do you find sort of balanced, healthy pleasure pleasures in your life, whether it be related to embodiments or, I mean, I guess I would say it all probably is related to the body, but how is that for you? And because I think of it as an act of resistance, as well as like what people don't realize is that it's not this lavish thing. It actually adds to our resilience and to, research shows the ways in which when we give ourselves pleasure or engage in like communal ways of enjoying being in our bodies together, how it increases altruism and compassion for others and reduces that sense of separateness. So I can imagine like in your classes that you teach, and yoga classes or other community events, like you are increasing this energetic sense of like connection and community through the movement that you're guiding them in. So that was like kind of at the beginning, there was a question in there, which was how do you sort of rejuvenate and have your own sense of resilience through like your own pleasure practices of all different kinds, not just erotic and sexual?
I would say that when I'm not able to go take yoga, which I love heated yoga is like something so special to me because there's something about, okay, well now you're going to get into like my philosophy and all that other stuff, but
good, let's hear it. I want to hear
it. Heat, it all comes back to movement. Heat is movement. Heat is vibration. Vibration is a movement. And so when you're in a heated room practicing movement, the molecules in that space are just moving around. There's nothing in the world that's solid. Let me also say that. Even this, solid piece of material, the molecules are moving. So there is no such thing as stillness, or everything is in motion. So to like be in a room,
oscillation, I think of it too as that.
Everything is always, it's a pulsation, a movement, just like your heartbeat. Everything is in motion. So to be in a room where the molecules are just moving incessantly and to also be in motion at the same time, to me is the ultimate prayer. It's a very powerful experience to me that puts me to the close, like I can't express to you with words, I just have to do it,
Yes. Sean Korn talked about it as like a body prayer.
Yes. Oh, you make me think of Deja Joelle. That's another powerful being who her body prayers that's the work that she does. It's literally what it's called. She does a lot of work with meditation and mindful moving as well. But it's when I'm not able to take heated yoga or CrossFit, which is also like, that is also my like, I love finding communities of people who love moving their bodies and I love sweating and they love a certain type of intensity. And I found that in my CrossFit community as well. Timberwolf Fitness, that's also a part of my world. But when I can't do those things that I love, that prepare me, I would say I find pleasure in my relationships, in my friendships. I literally, when I can't go do things, I'm like, I literally, sometimes I sit after I finish my coffee or after I finish writing a bunch of emails, I'm like, who can I call that I love? I literally like scroll, I'm like, who can I call that I love right now? And then, like it's through those connections with the people that I love that keep me grounded. Who none of them, I haven't lived in the same place as the people that keep me grounded in, I don't know how long. So I've been having these emotional tethers to these people who are my friends, my family, my mom, my sister, and closest friends. So I would say that is my connection to staying in my fullness, because those people make me laugh, or we laugh together. We talk about our frustrations. We talk about all types of things. So I would say that's one of the ways for me when I can't be in my body or get quite to my body, that I stay connected to pleasure.
Well, and it sounds like these are people that really you can be real with, then that's what they want of you and you want of them. Like there isn't the extra energy to have to code switch, wear a particular hat, look or sound a certain way just to like get to be real. I mean, that's so beautiful. And I know that's a big thing that a lot of people have been, missing. But yeah, I felt like such a hypocrite writing the book because it was all about getting away from screens and really like this idea of movement as medicine. And yet I was sitting on my ass all day in front of a screen, either writing or doing telemedicine.
But you know what I have to say about that though, is that movement happens in a lot of different ways. I think that, again, expanding and looking through a prism at what movement is and how things move. It's not always the physical body that's moving. That there have been, when you spoke about that inner knowing that came up, there's other layers of things that are moving, awarenesses that are becoming enlightened. So that's what I would say to that, is that you may not have been moving your body, but you were moving in so many other ways too. And I think that's something that we have a hard time with, like, accepting that truth of that, energy moves in so many different ways. It moves through the body, it moves through the spirit, it moves through the mind, it moves through, the elements. Like it's there. So just allowing your mind to shift and recognize the way things are moving. Because how many times have you felt like you were totally stagnant?
Right.
It felt like you weren't moving, but you were. Something was moving somewhere.
Yeah.
Even if it was a descent.
Even if it was like moving, like I was just face planting and floundering. But yeah, I mean, thank you for reminding me of that too. I think that is really helpful, given, because at the end of the day, even though we might be really intentional in being bodyful, the world will require us to be sedentary. And so I think that that's beautiful to remember. Like, there is still the heartbeat, there is still your subtle body energy, and the pulsation and oscillation, and just the cause and effect between your mind and body. Maybe you're physically still, but maybe there's creativity bursts happening, or even just intellectual bursts. I feel like I'm always championing movement in the body because so much focus on the intellectual mind, but then at the same time, I need to recognize, like, that is movement. That is on a cellular level, inspiration and connection as well.
But even you moving through the book, you might not, even your body might not have been moving, but you were going through these movements of this, this orchestra of intellect, right? Like you're creating a score that had a movement. You finished this movement and you moved on to the next. So to me, that's still, just me adding more language to the same idea that we're already talking about. Like that. Yeah. That's still movement. But I hear you though. We also don't move enough. I don't think either too. So I think it's important to keep an emphasis on the embodiment, because the reason why the body is so important to me in teaching, I haven't been teaching yoga as aggressively as I have in the past for a lot of reasons right now, but I think that it is our connection, reconnecting and reawakening of our connection to our human body, this visceral experience, that I think is the gateway to empathy. That's why it's important to me to do so many things at a time. That's why you see me dancing and singing and doing, you see me kind of doing all these things at once as a performer, because it makes me have to have more awareness. It increases, it forces me to reach beyond what I think I'm already capable of. And by me pushing myself to that place, it forces my audience to be like, can she do this? It forces them beyond what they know they can be sure of that they're experiencing. And that's really also my artistic practice, is pushing and stretching people beyond what they think they know, and beyond what I believe I know too. Yeah. I think it's when we're all, so this is a part of my philosophy and what's behind everything that I do. It's really reaching to the edges of what we think we know, right? It's really that being on the edge is the most revolutionary place that you can be. It is the place where you make revolutionary choices. It's on that.
Yeah. And we think of it as discomfort.
I'm gonna do it, or you're like, let me pause right here. Actually, but if you never are at that edge of belief, then nothing changes really.
Well, I think it's the edge has been so associated with discomfort, and we're, these creatures that don't want to be in discomfort. And like I tell a lot of my clients, they come and they want me to give answers. And I'm like, being on this edge, in this place of the questions, try to enjoy some of these questions themselves and the mystery and the unfolding, because
people don't like mystery.
No.
Oh God. They're like, what?
Yeah. They're like, just tell me what to do. Just give me 3 easy steps, 3 life hacks, and boom.
Oh,
and then,
wow. I mean, I think what's interesting when I hear that and when I come across that with people too, of like, just give me the, I think that, I see Yoni Light is here, who just hopped on. I just ran, one of the big projects that I was doing was the Bohemian Way intensive training program. And it was basically a beta test of all of the things I just shared with you that are the methods I use to stay aware of myself, and the methods I use to allow myself to operate at my personal edge. That's what I offered to people to test out, like give me feedback on. And so one of the main thing I try to anchor for everyone is I don't have any of the answers. You have them. And this is I say in my yoga classes, I'm going to keep pushing you because that's what I do. But your body is actually your teacher. I'm just the guide.
Yeah.
So it's your job actually to listen to you more, because your body's going to say, oh, this is too much. Or your body's going to say, oh, okay. Go a little further,
Yeah.
Your body's going to say that to you. And it's your job to make sure you're listening, even though you're tuned into what I'm pushing you to do. So yeah. I think that's like, what sticks out to me when I hear you, like that natural instinct for people of like, just tell me what it is. It's like,
right.
We're not going to tell you what it is.
Yeah. It's like, I get it that we all want that life preserver. And, and there's nothing wrong with wanting support or wanting others to kind of, to help, of course. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's our own, we are the expert of ourselves. And you as a teacher, me as a teacher, or a psychologist, it's like, we're facilitators. We create the space, that containment. But then that's where, people get to choose your own adventure.
People still push back when you give them that insight?
Well, and I should say, especially for any clients that might be listening to this, so many of my clients they really are just curious, and they aren't actually a lot of times asking for answers, but they're, sometimes at the beginning, and people newer to therapy too. It's just like, what is this process? I'm talking to a stranger. And that's where actually I do a lot of somatic stuff in the session. And I mean, you go to a deeper level, that's kind of a whole nother topic, but I just love what you were saying though, about this idea of where the transformation and the expansion happens is at the edge. And if we keep ourselves so safe and we're not letting ourselves kind of be in discomfort, where's the growth? Or the really self recognition and coming back into who we really are, given all the noise. So you're helping me to, because I've been kind of burnt out lately. So I'm going to get some rest, and then I'm going to kind of keep going to my edge, which sort of comes naturally to me. Like I often just am vulnerable without even thinking about it.
Me too. So that's also the challenge too of being a guide or a teacher for others. It's like, I have to continuously remind myself, I live there. I live certain things I'm totally fine having a conversation with and sharing, and or I've just had moments where I'll say something and people are overwhelmed, and I'm like, oh, that's not a big deal. That's a big deal. I don't say it out loud, but I'm thinking to myself, that's a big deal to you? That's not a big deal. So I have to always constantly remind myself that or people will share things and I'm like, okay, cool, but for them to share, it was really overwhelming for them to share, and I'm like, I have to remember that there's a difference,
your edge and their edge, and but so I love that you said you live there, that is home for you. But it's never too much. There's never this vulnerability hangover.
Not for me, but the people who are my friends, or who, the people who love me, maybe there can be for them. Because I'm always there. I'm always ready to ask more questions. I'm always ready to dig a little deeper, always. That's something my mom has always made me aware of. You've always had questions. You've always asked questions. Always, always, always. I remember.
And did she encourage that in you?
They didn't have to. I wasn't going to stop. My godmother always tells this story when I come home about, she was driving me somewhere. I had to be 6 or 7. And I kept asking her, I would say, what's 612? What's 715? I kept asking her these questions, and she was like, what are you looking at? I was too little to tell her whatever it was, but I was old enough to know my numbers to be able to call the numbers out. And she said, finally, she realized I was talking about the height on the highway bridge.
Oh,
The
wow.
tiny number on the right corner when you drive by to inform truck drivers of how,
Oh,
what the clearance is of the bridge. And like,
that like most people never even notice at all.
right.
No.
But I'm just like noticing all of them,
Observing.
asking her, not getting any answers, but still asking for each of them. So I've
Yeah.
always been very inquisitive and extremely talkative, and definitely have my questions. So yeah, I think it can be more tiring for the people who love me sometimes when they're tapped out and they don't have any more, they're not interested in going any more layers, but I still have this, like, I'm ready to keep going. So
yeah. Well, and I love how it does. I don't hear you saying that you've gone to this place of like, am I too much for people? Like, because I definitely see that with clients.
oh yeah, no,
even
I
my
have.
own self.
No, I have.
Okay.
Like the people I'm talking about at this point are my inner circle. These are there's a very, very consistent group of people who I've known for many, many years, you know. But in terms of my, you know, yeah, no, it's definitely been hard and challenging, especially in the Twin Cities, being this person who asks questions. You don't ask questions in the Twin Cities, not for real, not too many, and not too deep. You don't do that here. It's not, it makes people extremely uncomfortable. And I'm very rarely met with transparency voluntarily from people, you know, like it's made it, it's been challenging for sure. And it brings up question, like I don't know, it's, I'm pretty transparent about I've had a bittersweet experience living here in the Twin Cities. You know, there have been times that have been amazing in my career especially, but then personally it's been very challenging. And even when I lived home in Detroit, part of the reason why I left was not feeling I felt like I was questioned all the time. It was like, well, so, you know, I used to wear my hair very different all the time, and I would have, you know, like people say, so, you know, why are you wearing your hair like that? Yeah. Like, just ask me to my face, you know, and just constantly questioning.
More direct than some of the Midwest passive aggressive. It's like, do not do passive aggressive with me. Like, just be direct. Let's just all be direct. We get into more problems.
It feels like it hurts some people in the Midwest to be direct. It's like painful for them. Some people, not everybody. I've met some folks, you know, some great people who are now lifetime friends, I'm sure, you know. So, but it's been swimming upstream situation for me for a majority of the time that I've lived here, in some of my work experiences, and, you know, that I'm not exempt from that. And I've been heady about it in my head, like, maybe if I just, you know, maybe if I just don't say anything, you know. But it's like, but somebody got to say something, because no one's going to say anything if I don't say anything at all. And I have to, at a certain point, at least care enough for myself to say something, you know.
Right. Yeah. Like a couple months before the pandemic hit, I went to LA just with the plan to it was going to be like a sort of almost like a year abroad, but I wanted to really do a lot of trainings and networking in LA. And I had some people in my community in the Twin Cities be like, no, you know what, in LA, like being like a relationship and sex therapist who's holistic and a yoga teacher and pleasure actor, like that's everywhere in LA. We need you in Minneapolis. We need you in the Twin Cities, because this is where there are people that want it and crave it. I mean, we're both, you know, no doubt have connected to communities that are, you know, certainly just more awake as far as these, you know, issues. And so, you know, there's something to be said for, there's a need here, and there, you know, everywhere. Not like they're still like, oh, LA has it all figured out. The coast have it all figured out.
I hear you. It's a challenge. I mean, but I'd say that's where my traveling comes in. That's why I have to move around. I've also learned here that I don't think there's a single place that has everything that I need, that can serve all of my needs, you know. And, so traveling that's like also, so I guess that's another huge one I didn't talk about, because, you know, we've been still coming out of COVID, but moving my actual human body around the world is a part of my homeostasis. So like dancing and moving my body, talking, communicating, and evolving and growing my relationships is a part of movement in my life. and also literally physically moving my body around the world. Those things all keep me that stuff keeps me healthy, it keeps me balanced, and those things all bring me pleasure, period.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, all like my disposable income seems to go to travel, and that's where I learn the most. That's where I feel like I grow and just learn about myself and other people, and also just check myself too. I'm like, because I'm not as comfortable sometimes in my travels, and sometimes I'm like my most joyful, but yeah, there's something to be said for getting out of your comfort zone, going to new places, or going back to places that you love that you know, are really significant for you. And so, yeah, and once it gets cold here, that's when I start to spread my wings and fly. Well, now before we wrap up, I want to just find out more about like the projects you're working on now, where people can find you and, you know, engage in your teachings and your work.
Yes. So that's a funny question. So, I mean, right now, I am kind of steeping in new projects, and I'll probably be. I'm at a pause right now. Just so what I just finished working on was the Bohemian Way intensive training program. My first beta test. It's a week intensive program that runs from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. So I just finished that first beta test. We offered 4 classes a day to professional dance artists. And so yeah, I just did it to get feedback and really just like learn, you know, offer the experience and see what kind of experience people had, figure out what can be changed and what should keep the same. So what it was comprised of is Bohemian Way training, which is core kinetics yoga, which is my style and base of yoga, vinyasa style. Circuit training, and a series of spiral and twisting exercises to strengthen the spirals across the body for balance. We also did CrossFit, we did yin yoga, and we also did the journal vibe, which is also another form of self-study that I specialize in. We also did ballet bar work and contemporary modern phrase work.
This sounds like my dream week.
We also did Pilates reformer work. Also like my full core kinetics yoga class, contemporary heels work in high heels. Ooh. And yeah, so it's about 7 classes that we did. And so, yeah, so that just getting all of the, like, these are all the things I do for myself. Yeah. And so I also tested my actual schedule with these people, Monday through Friday. It was an actual schedule I give myself. So you can stay tuned for an announcement at some point of kind of a reflection on it and the next time I'm going to offer it.
Is it just for teachers, like for dance and movement teachers, or can other lay people do it?
So what I learned in offering this beta test for the first time is that there is an opportunity for me to offer it to professional dancers, but also to non-professional dancers and people who are just really invested in their bodies. And so that's what I need to figure out before I make any big announcements is like, which direction do I want to offer first? Is it, you know, do I want to just do 2 more and just try it and see? Or like, I haven't figured that out yet, but that was my goal, was to just like learn and get some information.
Smart.
So you can stay tuned.
Okay.
You know, and also because I want to get some sponsorship for it, because I had the opportunity to offer it for free to these folks, and I would like to be able to still have some of those options available for people to attend for free.
Fantastic. Yeah.
And then I also just shot a short film.
That's what I've been curious about too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and this is all in the same week, by the way. So that's why I was like off the grid and like delirious.
And I was hitting you up. I'm like, are you still wanting to read?
No, I know, definitely. But yeah, that all happened in a week that I've been planning it since January. So it was a 4-day film shoot. We did about 8 to 10 hours per day of shooting after I finished that full week of training and teaching. And it was intense and it was amazing. So it was for my show, Center Play, which is actually a play I created in 2018. It was supposed to premiere at the Guthrie in 2020, and it was canceled due to COVID. it's a very intimate piece that happens in the round. The audience is actually on the stage with me, and I wasn't sure when that would be safe to do again. So I didn't want to wait to be creative. So I decided to create a short film, just giving everybody a taste into these characters in the show that I've created. So you can stay tuned for that in 2022, because I want to take the time to really build a strong marketing plan for it and really make sure that people can understand what's going on and be involved with it and have talkbacks and conversations and, you know, so
really encourage conversations and dialogue around it.
Because it's about, you know, essentially four Black women, three Black women, and kind of the expression of femininity is what the fourth section is. And so they're all kind of dealing with different things that I think I haven't seen enough conversation about. One of them is the executive director of a huge museum in the US, and we haven't seen a Black woman run one of the top museums in the country. That hasn't historically happened yet. And so the curiosity of what this woman has had to promise or sacrifice, or who she's had to sacrifice in order to get to that position, is a curiosity to me in terms of Black folks and how we interact with each other, and how, you know, what does that mean? Some people feel like we don't need to be in those places at all. Some people feel like, why not? So I want to explore that. Another character is a young Black painter who has a rare form of narcolepsy, and so she's kind of dealing with figuring out how, you know, where does her drive fit in everything. She's got some of the paintings that she makes, she shows, and some of them she doesn't, and, you know, she's just kind of dealing with a lot of, she's in the midst of like a creative spurt, and she's trying to figure out what to do. And another character, you know, and we also go through time. So we meet one in 2020, we meet one in 1998, and we meet one in 1956. And so they're all kind of dealing with different things. And so I'm excited to have the time next year to really dig into those curiosities that I have with each one of these women. You know, Graciela is living in 1956, and her mother was a madam, you know. And so there's a lot to be said about Black women and sex work, and Black women, you know, making enough money to care for themselves, you know, and the ways that we have been documented throughout history. Nobody wants to document the Black woman who's a madam, who has enough money and cares for her family.
That's like invisible. That's hidden.
Nobody wants to talk, you know, and the impact that had on this character. And, you know, it's been a lot of fun creating and writing for all of these characters. And so, you know, you can stay tuned. I would say most of these things will come out next year. So.
And I want to get like into a yoga class that you teach. Do you have any yoga classes you're teaching soon? And
no, not right
yoga,
now.
No? Not
right now. Right now, I'm just focusing on center play, the creative, because I'm also still writing out the play. I'm like expanding it. So I'm steeped in the writing process. So my request for everyone would be to follow me on Instagram. You can visit my website to learn more about me. It's www.listen2vie.com. You can sign up on my email list and stay tuned. But I would just, that's what I got right now.
Well, and I meant to say at the beginning, I get so excited that I'm really bad at introducing the person I'm talking to, but I should have said at the beginning that I first met you when we did our TEDx talk in 2019. So people should watch our TEDx talks. Mine's called Pleasure to the People. Remind me, what is yours called?
Is performing art worth the struggle?
Performing art worth the struggle. Yeah.
Yes.
And I saw, speaking of like movement in heels. Oh, I was impressed.
Yes. Yeah.
That was
still at the beginning phases of that.
Yeah. I took Introduction to Burlesque. Not once, but twice. That's how many times I needed the intro. But that was my one little stint at trying to sort of, you know, inhabit my body sensually while wearing some really high heels. And it was kind of touch and go, but, you know, got to engage your core.
You do.
Well, thank you for sharing this time with me and everybody. And thank you for reminding me also to keep living at my edge and to remember all the kind of the oscillation and movement and all these ways that aren't overt movements, and really kind of the beauty and inspiration and creativity in that. And just, and thank you for sharing your work and your message, not only right now, but with the Twin Cities, the world.
So thank you so much for
Yeah.
all the work that you're doing. Thank you for centering pleasure. I appreciate you. I'm so proud of you.
Well, I have this everywhere.
Yes. Where
Because
can
it
we
looks
buy it?
backwards, but pleasure's all yours. Yeah, available at all bookstores, Amazon, whatnot. But yeah, this has been such a treat. So
Yes.
respect, and
Yeah.
I'll be looking for you. I'll try to find you at Moto and,
I'm gonna
and online and
the link
everything.
the link to get your book is in your bio, correct?
It's yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll order my copy.
Yeah, thank
All right.
you.
Thank
All
you.
right. It's been my
Bye.
pleasure.